What's up, guys? It's your boy Ellison Jordan here for the Unheard Athlete Podcast. I'm your host for this podcast. I appreciate you guys for joining and returning and tuning back into this next episode of the Unheard Athlete Podcast, which will go into my junior year of high school. Junior year of high school. I'm tripping. Going into my junior year of high school and how that went. So let's get started. So before we were talking about where I left off was getting my first offer from Michigan State. Talked about how I was excited and ecstatic and everything. I really was. And it started to pick up for me because I started doing camps. I started getting recognition. Like I started getting highly ranked by other recruiting services like 247 Sports, Scout.com back in the day, Rivals, obviously, and the ESPN. I started to see myself take a big turn, into my junior year. Not only that, but I started becoming a little more mature. I was very well experienced. I was one of the upperclassmen and stuff like that. So I was one of the leaders now. Not the main leader, but I was one of the leaders now. Given the fact that I played all since I've been playing like the first 3 years, I was starting every year, and I was doing pretty well. So I became, one of the leaders for sure. And it got to the point where it's like, I realized who I was. I found my identity as my junior year, and I started to kind of soar from that point. And junior year was a pretty good year, and which I will get into soon. And it was just showing my true identity as a football player and as a person. Football gave me that for sure, and being able to do a lot of those things, like um, I'm sorry, I had a brain fog. Being able to do a lot of those things like represent who I was for my family and for the school and lead by example, through action, was very big for me my junior year. So just kind of like finding my maturity level my junior year for sure. Um, Going back to the offers, like I started stacking up offers as well. So Michigan State offered me. I was still a sophomore year, but I was still going into my junior year. So it was 2014. So going to my junior year, then Virginia Tech came around. Then Maryland. I started going to camps my sophomore year, but I started going to camps as well my junior year as well. I remember doing like Virginia, Maryland. Got offers from Virginia. I got offers from Marshall, etc. I did a camp at Penn State, and the camp at Penn State was pretty interesting because the head coach at the time and the D line coach was very interested in me. I remember them calling me when I was coming out the weight room at our school. The coach gave me the phone to talk to the D line coach at the time for Penn State. And they're all emphatically saying that they were interested in what I can do and they wanted to get me up there. So I did. I remember going to the camp, going off at the camp. People were noticing. People were like, "Wow, this guy can ball" and stuff like that. And I was just balling. So when you ball at a camp, you expect to get an offer. But the only reason I didn't get an offer was at the time I was still like 5'10" and a half, maybe 5'11", and like undersized, and the coach was like looking down upon that a little bit. So the coach didn't offer me a scholarship at Penn State at first. He offered me later down the line, which I'll talk about a little bit, but he didn't offer me at first just based on my height, and he was just trying to make sure that and that was frowned upon during that time. Like if you were undersized, you'll get overlooked. But I was blessed to have some of the offers that I did have. Like I didn't get no Alabama or LSU offers or Michigan offers or Ohio State offers, but I got some pretty decent offers like North Carolina, Syracuse, Virginia, like I said, Wake Forest, West Virginia, Marshall, Old Dominion, JMU. So I had a mixture of D1 AA, mostly D1 schools, but like D1 single A schools, but some mixture of D1 AA as well. But the point is like I was getting some recognition by colleges. So I know, Lord behold, if I stayed healthy, throughout my high school career, I could play at the next level, which I did. But that comes later down the line a little bit. But so junior year, I was stacking up offers. Like going into my junior year, I was stacking up offers. You know, so everything was going according to plan. So to start for our season, we were playing on ESPN again, and we were playing away for our first game, and we were playing another team from Ohio. And this team wasn't Archbishop Mola, but this other team called St. Edwards. And St. Edwards was one of the best teams in the country during that year. They were very well coached, strong. You know, that's how football is. You know, anybody from Ohio, they play tough football. They play real sound, fundamental football, structured football, etc. They play real good football out there. And they showed us that night, or showed us that day, because we lost pretty badly on ESPN against another Ohio team, and on ESPN like 38-7. So that was just it's just gonna be sophomore year 2.0, where we start off good, or like we have a down year. You know, the last year we started off good, we got the win, but then we lost a couple games and we didn't finish that well. Like now, for my junior year, 2014 to 2015 season, now we're looking at like, oh, this is gonna be like a whole different year. This is gonna be the same year where we don't do well. So that was pretty concerning time, given our first loss, like losing like that on ESPN in a 38-7 fashion was just crazy. But it is what it is. It is what it was, or excuse me, not it what it was. It is what it is. What it is. We had a big loss, and we took it on the chin. We had to move on to the next one. Individually, I was one of the highly touted players during that game. I got some pressures every once in a while. I actually had a big run, because they still playing me at fullback. So they actually put me at fullback, and they had me do a little, I don't know what you call it, but it's like I was off the tackle. I was like a Y off. So I was on the other side of the ball, or other side of the offensive line. And then I remember the quarterback handing me the ball from the opposite side. And I remember running to the other side. I ran for like nearly 20 yards. So that was a pretty good, that was pretty good getting on TV and seeing people seeing me like do my thing. But unfortunately, we didn't win. We came out with an L. So that was the biggest thing. And then the next team we played against was Paramus again. We played against Paramus. And that was worse than last year, because they came back. They had like a whole, I'm sorry, I'm looking at something, trying to pull up the score for the Paramus game. But Paramus was a team that was still highly rated, still highly touted, and they came to our state to play us at Townsend. The same place we played Good Counsel my sophomore year, we played Paramus at Townsend for the second game. And just like just like last year we played against Paramus, we lost big again. We lost 35-0. So that was just a big loss. Having two back-to-back losses versus highly touted teams, and you're supposed to be one of the highly touted teams as well, and you get blown off the field by a big margin like that, like 38-7. And then when it came to Paramus, we played them. We were like 35-0. It was 35-0, and that was not a good game at all. And individually, it was not a good game, and then as a team, wasn't a good game at all. Like, I was a non-factor that game. I only had like maybe one tackle, maybe two, but it was still like those are empty stats because you didn't do anything, So that was just a rough outing for us. And now we were looking at 0-2. We were starting off 0-2. We was like, wow, this is about to be sophomore year. This is about to be like 2014. No, see, this is about to be the 2013 season all over again, because we lost versus St. Edwards. We lost versus Paramus back-to-back years. And we were just like, kind of shocked, because, we just had a sophomore year slump. Or I keep saying sophomore year. It was my sophomore year, but we had a 2013 slump. We brought back most of the guys. We had a lot of returners coming back. So we thinking things are going to be different this year, and things are going to, move on ahead. And the first two games, it didn't look like that. So we were all just, just disappointed. Well, we were mad. We were all just, we didn't like how the season was going. And that was just like a bad day. The next day was a bad day, because I remember we did these little pursuit drills where, if you imagine like a whole bunch of trash cans, like the trash cans was the offensive side of the ball, and then the defensive side of the ball. So we'd be in our stances in our formation, and we had to run the different spots on the field, do up downs, do up downs, hit the ground, come back up, get back in a record time in a set time before we had to get back before time. We had to get back before the clock hit a specific time, and I remember just being tired that day because we did it felt like 50. It felt like we might have did 50 of those pursuit drills. We had to get back in a certain amount of time for each defense. Like there was like the ones and then the twos, and then each defense had to get back in a specific time. And if you didn't, it would be a loaf. So I remember getting one loaf. And I was just tired that day. I mean, because they ran us like till our tongues fell out. So it was just a bad day. And it's understandable because we lost back-to-back games by big margins. We got blown off the field back-to-back games by two pretty good teams. And it's like we're supposed to be one of the good teams and we're losing like that. So it's pretty unfortunate. But nonetheless, we picked it up throughout the rest of the season. Next game we played against Anacostia. We beat them 49-0. So we got back in the win column. So we got our first win of the season. Took the third game, but we got back and things were moving ahead. And then we played Good Counsel again. Third time playing Good Counsel during my 4-year tenure. We beat Good Counsel 20-0. And that game was just a great game for us and then even for me, because I remember just for me, speaking about myself, I remember just going off that game, having like 2 sacks, multiple tackles. I was just flying around. And I was playing both sides of the ball that game. I was playing fullback. I was starting at fullback because I think somebody got hurt. One of our teammates got hurt, so they had me starting at fullback. I was like the backup fullback in case they needed somebody, but they had the starting fullback at the time hurt. So I was starting the whole game. I was on the field the whole game. The only time I came off the field was during special teams. But I was in shape. Like I keep going back to this little chubby fourth grade kid who couldn't do a push up or sit up and needed somebody to push me to help finish the lap. Now here I am playing at a high level in high school and playing against a good team like Good Counsel, and I'm playing both sides of the ball. And I had a motor. I was just going. And that's another thing I like to describe myself. And I meant to describe myself as a player earlier in the previous podcasts, previous episodes. In the previous episodes, was I always had a motor when I was in high school. Even in youth football, I always had a motor. Like I kept going. Do I have that motor now? A little bit, but I get a little more winded. You know what I'm saying? But like I definitely love myself during those times because I had a motor like nobody else. I just kept going. So just want to bring that out too. So we beat Good Counsel 20-0. So we're on a 2-game win streak. Then we played St. Francis at our place. Back-to-back home games. We played St. Francis at our place. And we beat them senseless 42-6. 42-16. We were just balling and we were just on a roll. This is MIAA play now. So we were on a roll versus the MIAA. We beat St. Francis. We beat Spalding. We beat Loyola. Francis Collegiate, my sophomore year we scrimmaged them. So it wasn't like a regular game. We scrimmaged Francis Collegiate my sophomore year, but then we put them on the actual schedule and we beat them like 42-27. So pretty good team that we beat up on. Then we played Mount St. Joe. We beat them 38-14. We played Calvert Hall at their place. We squashed them 35-7. And then the last game of our season was the McDonough game. I skimmed through all the other games because this was this is the most important game of that season and probably the most important game of this episode that I'm going to talk about. So, mind you, we just lost to McDonough by before I get into that, I think this is after the Francis Collegiate game, not right after, but the week after the Francis Collegiate game. I remember At the time I didn't get a Penn State offer. And I remember being kind of irritated and pissed because it's kind of like they keep looking at my side, but it's like I can play. And I just literally just dominated the whole camp against guys who were bigger than me. And yet the head coach at the time didn't want to offer me. But they kept their interest. They kept looking out me. They kept looking out for me, and not looking out for me, but they kept looking into me. Keep making sure I was doing my thing and stuff like that. Making sure I was keeping everything in check at the time because they were recruiting me. But you know, I was thinking I was never going to get an offer from Penn State, and at the time, I was interested in Penn State. So when that happened, there was one time I was on a bus, and mind you, too, I started taking this charter bus to Gilman. Not charter bus, but it was like a regular, not like a school bus, but it was like a trans. I can't describe it, but it was like a bus that picked different people up from like different parts of Maryland and took them to like there was a French school, there was Boys Latin, and then Gilman who lived in like different parts of Maryland, who lived like further down in like PG County or different areas. You know what I'm saying? So that was I was on the bus when I got a call from the head coach. And the head coach was like, I remember the conversation a little bit. Like, I know we probably should have offered you sooner, and I know you've been waiting for this offer, but we're gonna give it to you. We're gonna offer you. And that's when Penn State finally offered me on the bus. Yeah, I remember being so ecstatic that day. I was like, wow, another big time program, another iconic program like Penn State is looking at me now. I went to the camp, I did my thing, and I wind up getting an offer. So that was a big at the time I was very blessed, and that was a big opportunity for me, a big blessing for me, to get an offer from Penn State, like a prestigious school like Penn State, a iconic school like Penn State, because Penn State is one of the most legendary schools in the history of college football, you know. So that was a big time offer during the time. Now, going back to the McDonough game. So they just beat us senseless last year at their place. So this was a game where I was on edge, the whole team was on edge, we were ready to go. And I was just so pressed to play this game because it's kind of like I needed my get back. I didn't play well the last game. I didn't play well last year versus them. And we didn't play well as a team. So this is like our get back. This is like we need our lick back for sure. So that game went to the wire. I remember there was our offense, unfortunately, they had multiple turnovers, and, it made it a closer game than it should have. So we were going back and forth. And I remember making some plays that game. I remember getting a major sack to help get the ball back to the offense. I remember recovering the fumble to help get the ball back to the offense. I remember, having more of an impact that game than I did my sophomore year versus McDonough. So I'm thinking, we have a chance. I'm thinking like we're moving in the right direction that game. We're doing everything we need to do. We're doing things that we had to like. We're doing things that we need to figure. We're doing the things that we need to do in order to win the game. I'm making plays. Defense is making plays. Offense is making plays. They had a lot of turnovers, but they're still making plays every once in a while. But it got to the point where it was like it got to the point where they came back and they tied the game up in overtime. In the fourth quarter, and that came from at first I was lined up on the wrong side, and that's how they got open. And I remember, and I just messed up. I wasn't on the right side. I was on the right side. Now I'm supposed to be on the left side. I'm supposed to be to the tight end. Was I to the tight end on that one? I'm supposed to be to the tight end, either to or from the tight end. So the tight end was away from me. If the tight end was away from me, if I was supposed to be away from the tight end, I should have been on the left side. I was supposed to be to the tight end. I was supposed to be either way. I messed up. I was lined up the wrong way, and they got a big run into the red zone. And there was a couple times where they try to fit in, or they try to get into the red zone, or they try to punch in to score, and they later wound up getting a touchdown later down the line, and that wound up being a heartbreaker at the time because it was it was tied 14-14. So the game was getting a little sticky. It was getting a little interesting now, because we were better than them that year. Way better. We were way better than we were last year. We were way better than we were last year in 2013, and then we were way better in 2014 than we were in 2013 for sure. But we couldn't when it came to McDonough, and we were a better team than them. But when it came to that game, we messed up. We didn't finish. So long story short, when it came to overtime, they started on the 20 and they go in to your end zone. They try to get into your end zone. McDonough winds up scoring. And we were on the ball. So they had the ball first. They wind up scoring. And then our offense fumbled the ball like the first play when they got in. And it was a scuffle. I remember looking. I was like, please don't let them get the ball back. Please don't let them get the ball back. And unfortunately, they got the ball back, and then it was a big win for McDonough. They won. They beat us 21-14 in overtime. And I remember the McDonough student section running our field and talking trash, planting their flag in our field. That was just a rough day. I remember crying like a baby. I remember crying like a baby. I can hold you. I remember crying like a baby. I was sad. I was like, man, we were so close. We were this close. We were a better team. We were better than we were last year. We had them on the ropes. We were playing good, but we didn't finish. And we left a lot of stuff on the field, and that's how they got the win. They weren't better than us they weren't better than us that year, for sure. They were not better than us as a team. As a talent, no. They were not better than us. Now, 2013, my sophomore year, they were way better. They showed it. They beat us like 30 to 40, 30 to 7. I need to go back and check. It was 30 to 7. That was just a tough way to lose because we were better. We clearly were better. Now, sophomore year, we couldn't do anything with them. But my junior year, 2014 season, we were way better. And I was going to say they got lucky. I know some guys from McDonough who's on that team. So I'm going to say, they got lucky. They did. They did. But, on the honest, and I'm just joking. But, they beat us fair and square. We just didn't finish at all. So that was a rough outing for us. But nonetheless, and that's the thing. I wish they would have gave us playoffs because, if we had playoffs, we would have beat them in the playoffs for sure. And that's why I don't know why they took away playoffs from us. That was just they robbed us from that. I don't know. It was the MIAA or somebody, but excuse me. But they just robbed that from us, like the playoffs. They robbed that from us, and that's always gonna be a thorn in my side or whatever you said, like my Achilles, not my Achilles heel, but a thorn in my side. That always going to be a thing that sticks that I hate that they took that away from us. But it is what it is. And individually, I did better than I did the previous year in my sophomore year, but it didn't count for nothing because we didn't win. So it was just unfortunate situation that day because we lost to a good team, but that team was not better than us for sure. We were the better team. By all accounts, we were the better team. We just didn't finish. So that was something that, we look at the turnovers, the multiple turnovers on offense, that me not being on the right side that allowed them to get into the red zone and later on scoring. You got to account for those things. We just didn't finish. So, excuse me. So it was just an unfortunate situation. Despite that, individually, pretty good season for me. I had around 60 tackles or 55, 60 tackles. I had 16 sacks that season. So I remember, really showing off that season. And that was a good year as well. I just like sophomore year, I just like my sophomore year so much because the way I was moving and, my elusiveness, my quickness was just crazy during my sophomore year. But junior year was great too because the amount of sacks I got, was crazy. like 15, 16 sacks. I remember just, making the right play at the right time and doing well. So that was just a blessing and a great time. So, and because of my season, I started racking up more accolades. I started racking up more awards, more recognition. Made MIAA for the second time, all MIAA for the second time, made all Metro, made um made all Metro, first team all Metro, made all state for big school. So big school was basically like, no, excuse me, made all state for private school. And then I made the all consensus list. So basically when the all state consensus, it's basically like um when you bring up all the schools together from like different parts, whether it's public or private school, you get all the people from like different schools to uh as a group. So I made all state consensus team, first team. So that was pretty good. That was a blessing to me. And I remember getting like they had this thing called the Baltimore Touchdown Club. I remember getting like, I remember making like a list for that. And then really I didn't make All American for Max Preps for some reason. And that's probably and I think if I had won that game, if we had won that game, I probably would have made All American for Max Preps. But that's okay. I wasn't tripping, I know I had a good season. I know I was still one of the best players in the country at the time. I was remember being ranked on ESPN like 122nd, the 122nd best player in the country, being ranked top 5 in the state. There's one that comes later down the line. I'll show you that later. There's one scout recording. There was one scout recruiting service that had me ranked number 1 player in the state. I remember being ranked top 10 in my position at some recruiting sites. I remember being ranked top 10 in my position. So now I definitely started getting a lot of recognition during my junior year. I mean, I started getting some my sophomore year, but then it's like it really took off when my junior year. I started getting offers, started getting recognition by recruiting services. Started playing pretty well, so things were going in the right direction. And what else? And I will say too that after my junior year, I started to get a little more offers, not a little more offers, but I started to get more interest from other schools. Like Tennessee offered me. I want to say, did North Carolina State offer me? I think North Carolina State offered me. Vanderbilt, Kentucky. A lot of other schools started offering me. University of South Florida. So I never got, big. I got Kentucky and Vanderbilt, which are great SEC schools as well. But I never got the Alabamas, the Michigans, the USCs, because a lot of that was based on my height. And I was like 5'11" my junior year, so I grew a little bit. But a lot of it was based on my height. That's why I didn't get a lot of the not like crazy. I was still blessed to get offers from D1 programs. Don't get me wrong. I was extremely blessed and highly favored to get offers from D1 programs. But it just in terms of like the marquee level schools, my biggest marquee, most iconic offer came from Penn State. You know what I'm saying? Just in terms of like the iconicness, the legendary school like Penn State, a legendary school like Penn State. So that was, like, do I wish I would have had like more offers, like in terms of like other schools? Like, absolutely. But also, I had options for sure. I had options, and it didn't go away. Those options didn't go away from me, and that was a major part and a major blessing I had was having options and having other opportunities to go play ball. Because I remember my freshman year, I was thinking I wasn't going to get any offers because of my size. But then once I started getting offers from Michigan State, Virginia Tech, Maryland, North Carolina, pretty good schools, my mindset started to change. My mindset started to shift from like, okay, I don't care how short I am. I don't care how people look at me. For my position, I'm short. That's cool. But I had that heart. I had that dog in me. I had the talent. I had the strength. I had the quickness. So despite my height, I knew my talent was going to overshadow that. Regardless of how tall I was, I knew my talent was going to overshadow that because I was talented, and it showed. And it showed my freshman year, sophomore year, it showed my junior year, and it showed my senior year. So, but that's ball game for now, folks. I appreciate you guys for tuning in and listening to my junior year. It wasn't the longest episode, But it was pretty informative, and just wanted to show you how things started to switch. Started to switch gears from my sophomore to junior year when it came to the offers. So I'm just want to talk to you guys about that. But I pray and hope you guys are well. Hope you guys, enjoyed this episode. And the next and final episode for my high school journey will be part 4, and that will be my senior year. And that will be very interesting to talk about. Extremely interesting to talk about. I think be the best part of this whole high school tenure journey. So hope you guys get ready for that and tune in next time for the Unheard Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Ellison Jordan again. Thank you. Have a blessed one.